Everyone at Memorial Hospital knew him simply as Daniel the janitor. The mute man who cleaned floors at night, kept his head down, and never caused trouble. But what they didn't know was that Daniel Hart once wore a white coat instead of janitor blues. What they didn't know was that his silence wasn't born from disability. It was born from a tragedy that stole his voice, his career, and everything he loved. And tonight, that silence would be tested in a way he never imagined. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar lullaby as Daniel pushed his cleaning cart down the fourth-floor hallway of Memorial Hospital. It was 2:47 a.m., the hour when the living slept and machines kept vigil over fragile bodies. His reflection in the polished floor showed a man in his late 40s, gray touching his temples, shoulders slightly hunched from years of pushing mops and carrying the weight of a secret no one would believe. Daniel had been invisible for 12 years. Invisible in the way janitors always are, present but unseen, necessary but forgotten. He preferred it that way. Invisibility was safer than memory. Silence was easier than explanation. If you believe that some secrets are too heavy to carry alone, and that courage sometimes hides in the most unexpected places, then please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect us all. Daniel had just finished mopping the East Wing corridor when he heard it. A door clicking shut. Soft footsteps. The kind that didn't want to be heard. He looked up from his bucket and saw Dr. Marcus Chen stepping out of room 412, his white coat pristine, his face composed in that practiced mask of professional calm that Daniel recognized all too well. He'd worn that same mask once. But something was wrong. Dr. Chen glanced left, then right, then slipped something into his pocket, a syringe, empty, catching the light for just a fraction of a second. Daniel's pulse quickened. His hands, calloused from years of manual labor, tightened around the mop handle. Room 412. That was Mrs. Eleanor Vance. 72 years old. Post-surgical recovery. Daniel had cleaned her room earlier. She'd smiled at him, one of the few patients who actually saw him, who whispered a kind "thank you" when he emptied her trash. She had kind eyes. The kind that reminded him of someone he'd lost. Dr. Chen walked past Daniel without a glance, his expensive shoes clicking against the tile, his cologne trailing behind him like authority itself. Daniel stood frozen, his mind racing through possibilities, through years of medical training that his brain refused to forget even when his voice had been taken. Something wasn't right. Daniel abandoned his cart and walked quickly to room 412. He pushed the door open just enough to peer inside. Eleanor lay sleeping, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The 4-bag hung above her bed, clear fluid dripping methodically into the tube. Everything looked normal. Except, Daniel's trained eyes caught it immediately. The port. The injection site on the 4-bag showed a fresh puncture mark. Recent. Within the last 2 minutes. His heart hammered against his ribs. Dr. Chen had injected something into that 4-line. But what? And why? Daniel's mind snapped back to his training, to the years he'd spent as Dr. Daniel Hart, one of the most promising surgeons at Boston General. Before the accident. Before the fire. Before his vocal cords were destroyed by smoke inhalation while trying to save. No. He couldn't go there. Not now. He had to act. But how? He couldn't speak. Couldn't call for help. Couldn't explain what he'd seen because even if he wrote it down, who would believe a janitor accusing the hospital's chief cardiac surgeon? Daniel pulled out his phone, an old model, cracked screen, and texted the only nurse who'd ever treated him with genuine kindness. Sarah Mitchell. Night shift supervisor. Room 412. Check 4-bag. Now. Emergency. He hit send, then stared at the screen, willing her to respond. 10 seconds. 20. 30. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Daniel. What's wrong? Are you okay? His fingers flew across the keypad. Patient in danger. 4 contaminated. Please trust me. Daniel, I can't just. How do you know this? He closed his eyes. This was the moment. The moment where his past and present collided. Where silence became impossible. Because I used to be a doctor. The typing dots stopped. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then. What? No time to explain. Daniel looked at Eleanor. Her breathing had changed. Slightly faster. Shallower. Whatever Chen had injected was beginning to work. Daniel dropped his phone and moved to the 4-line. His hands that once performed delicate surgeries, that once held a scalpel with the precision of an artist, reached for the tube. But he hesitated. If he was wrong, if he stopped her medication, he could kill her. If he was right and did nothing, she'd die anyway. The old medical oath echoed in his mind. First, do no harm. Before we continue, pause for just a moment and comment below. What would you do in Daniel's position? Would you trust your instincts even if no one believed you? Your thoughts matter. Daniel made his choice. He clamped the 4-line with his fingers, stopping the flow. Then he reached for the emergency call button and pressed it. Hard. Repeatedly. Within seconds, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Sarah burst through the door first, her eyes wide with alarm. Behind her, 2 other nurses and a resident doctor. Daniel, what are you? Sarah stopped mid-sentence when she saw his face. It wasn't the face of a janitor. It was the face of a doctor in crisis mode, focused, determined, afraid. Daniel grabbed a notepad from the bedside table and scribbled frantically, 4 poisoned. Check it. Now. The resident doctor, young and skeptical, scoffed. This is ridiculous. Security needs to wait. Sarah held up her hand. She'd known Daniel for 3 years. She'd never seen him like this. Get a toxicology kit. Now. The young resident hesitated, then obeyed. Within minutes, they'd drawn a sample from the 4 bag. Sarah sent it to the lab with a stat order. Eleanor's vital signs were deteriorating, heart rate increasing, blood pressure dropping. They switched her to a fresh 4 bag, and slowly, her numbers stabilized. 20 minutes later, the lab called. Sarah's face went white as she listened. She hung up and stared at Daniel. Potassium chloride. High concentration. Enough to cause cardiac arrest within 10 minutes. Her voice shook. You saved her life. The hallway erupted in whispered chaos. Security was called. Hospital administration woke up. And Dr. Marcus Chen, paged to the floor, walked into what he thought was a routine emergency, only to find himself surrounded by security guards and Daniel Hart standing at the center of it all. Chen's mask slipped. Just for a moment. A flash of panic. Then rage. This is absurd. A janitor? You're going to believe a mute janitor over me. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed the timestamp of his text to Sarah. 2:49 a.m. Security checked the hallway cameras. 2:48 a.m. Dr. Chen entering room 412. 2:49 a.m. Dr. Chen exiting, hand in pocket. Chen's jaw tightened. This proves nothing. But Daniel wasn't finished. He wrote on the notepad, hands trembling, check his right pocket. Syringe. Security did. And there it was. Still containing trace amounts of potassium chloride. As they led Chen away in handcuffs, still protesting, still denying, Sarah turned to Daniel. Her eyes were full of questions. You said you used to be a doctor. What happened? Daniel looked at Eleanor, now sleeping peacefully under careful observation. Then he pulled out his wallet and handed Sarah an old, faded ID card. Massachusetts Medical Board. Dr. Daniel Aaron Hart, M.D., Certified General Surgeon. Sarah gasped. You were Dr. Hart? From Boston General? I read about you in school. You were a legend. But the report said you died in that fire. Daniel shook his head slowly. He picked up the notepad one more time. I didn't die. But my voice did. And the woman I tried to save, she died anyway. I couldn't forgive myself. So I disappeared. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. And you've been here all this time? Cleaning floors. Daniel nodded. He wrote, penance. Or hiding. Maybe both. Why room 412? Why did you check on Eleanor specifically? Daniel's hand paused over the paper. Then he wrote words that broke everyone's heart. She reminded me of my mother. I couldn't let her die too. The police arrived within the hour. Detectives interviewed Daniel, and slowly, painfully, through written notes and old records, the full story emerged. Dr. Marcus Chen had been killing patients for months, elderly patients with no close family, patients whose deaths could be explained away as complications. Insurance fraud. He was collecting death benefits from policies he'd secretly taken out in their names. Eleanor Vance had been scheduled to die that night. But Daniel's 12 years of silence had finally broken in the most important way. Not with words, but with action. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that heroes can come from the most unexpected places, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the goodness that still exists in this world. 3 weeks later, Daniel stood in the hospital administrator's office. He'd been offered his old job back. Well, not his old job exactly, but a position as a medical consultant. No surgery. Just oversight. Just using his mind to catch what others missed. But Daniel shook his head. He wrote on his notepad, I'm not ready yet. Maybe someday. But I'd like to keep cleaning floors. I see things from down here that others miss. The administrator smiled. Then you'll clean floors. But as Dr. Hart. Not as the janitor nobody knows. Daniel considered this. Then he wrote, can I be both? And so he was. By day, Daniel Hart remained the quiet man with a mop bucket, the one who cleaned floors and saw everything. But now, the nurses knew. The doctors knew. When Daniel Hart tapped someone on the shoulder and handed them a note, they listened. Because the man who'd lost his voice had finally learned that silence could speak volumes, when paired with action, courage, and a heart that refused to look away from injustice. Eleanor Vance recovered fully. On the day of her discharge, she stopped by the janitor's closet where Daniel was organizing supplies. She didn't say anything at first. She just hugged him. Then she whispered, thank you for seeing me. Daniel nodded. And though he couldn't speak, his eyes said everything. I see you. I've always seen you. Because I know what it's like to be invisible. As she walked away, Daniel returned to his cart, his mop, his quiet existence. But now, his silence meant something different. It wasn't hiding anymore. It was listening. Watching. Protecting. Because sometimes the loudest heroes are the ones who never say a word. Before you go, tell us in the comments. Have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever witnessed something wrong but felt too powerless to speak up? Share your story below. You're not alone.